We got baseball with a first-place Baltimore Orioles team going to Yankee Stadium to exterminate the devil here this week before they come home. Luke Jones on the scene talking all things Orioles baseball as well as awaiting Ravens training camp, but passing the time where the Orioles with potential to go into Yankee Stadium and be disruptive this week. That's kind of titillating, but
plenty of, you have so many names up and down on the lineup that it was.
And it was such a euchre moment for Jim Hunter. It's like, oh, he bit on the high hard one. No, dude, he bit on a pitch was over his head.
but I'll say, in fairness to Scope, he's been better in that regard. Now, it's still very relative, but you've seen him swing the bat, and he's hitting 300.
As you pointed out on Twitter, hitting a lot of doubles too, man.
Yeah, they saw J.J. Hardy with a and we saw Chris Davis.
I mean, sort of.
It wasn't going to, especially early. It just tells you confident about going in there with their prospects of potentially winning 3 out of 4.
Well, and also you skip Tanaka, too, who we saw pitch on Sunday night against the Red Sox. I watched a lot of the Yankees and the Red Sox over the weekend because it was kind of on. It was hot as hell outside. How can
you miss it? Every game's on national TV.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, and also it's Saturday afternoon. It was like, 98 degrees. I wasn't going to walk it around.
Yeah.
I sat home watching baseball in the afternoon, and, all the announcers, whatever national crew, whether it's, Fox on Saturday, MLB on Friday, or Sunday night with ESPN and the Schulman Group, it's really all about this trading deadline, right? So as much as we're going to talk about the Yankees here and where the Orioles are, a first-place team, the Orioles will still probably be a first-place team when they come out of this thing this week, unless they fall on their face. But where will the Yankees be, and what could a 4-game sweep of the Yankees or, winning 3 out of 4, it moves them closer to this deadline where moving players is something historically they have not done. And I know we'll talk to Ken Singleton about it this week. We'll talk to people in New York about it the next couple of days. But this is a very, very sort of tenuous time for the franchise to maybe reload, and especially at a time when the Red Sox are trading away their best prospect to pick up a left-handed pitcher in Drew Pomerantz last week, that, the Red Sox are kind of going all in right now. If the Yankees were to just break it apart and make 4 or 5 deals this week, they could wind up with a stable of prospects if they're good about this, and certainly in a market where a lot of other teams are not selling, at least not yet.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be fascinating. I mean, we've been talking about this, and when I say we, I just mean baseball people have been talking about this for over a month now. It's clear. I mean, the Yankees were at one point, I guess, 8 or 9 games below 500. They've hovered just below 500 for most of the season. I mean, this team, hasn't gone on that run where they've been 10 games over 500, and you're saying, well, here come the Yankees in a way like they did last year, where they played a really good baseball despite their being so long in the tooth. But I think the thing that's interesting about this team is, what did they trade off? I mean, clearly people talk about Chapman, they talk about Andrew Miller. I think it's obvious that Carlos Beltran has some value. Now, is he netting you a top 5 and kind of prospect around baseball? Probably not, but I think you can get something for him of real value. But you look at some of their other, no one wants Alex Rodriguez. It's not that Jacoby Ellsbury's been bad by any means, but at the same time, they're talking about some expensive commodities here that really aren't all that great anymore. So it is tough. We know the mentality, the mindset in New York. That's not a team. That's a team that prides itself in never rebuilding and never being in this position. But what you just said, I think if they pull it off the right way, they could get themselves some nice pieces and not completely enter a rebuilding mode that lasts 5 years. I think it could be something where, bullpen parts. Don't get me wrong. I mean, bullpens are very valuable, but if you know what you're doing, you can build a pretty good bullpen over the course of a few years. It doesn't take forever to do that. You can stack some guys, make some shrewd trades. We've seen Dan Duquette make some really nice trades for guys such as Brad Brock over the last few years. But I think Miller and Chapman could really give them some nice pieces. But I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know if they're going to go stretch where maybe they win 7 of 9 to make their record look better, but not really be in a position where you feel they're a serious threat. I know what the standings say. They're not completely out of this thing. They don't have a double-digit deficit, but at the same time, you look at the three teams ahead of them in this division, and then you look at everyone else in terms of the wild card. I mean, in the West now, for as much as so many people wanted to bury Houston, they might be the hottest team in the American League right now. They've played really well. I mean, we know Texas has been one of the best teams in the AL all year long. Cleveland's played well. Detroit is hanging in there in the Central. I wouldn't count out Kansas City despite all the injuries they've dealt with. So if you're the Yankees, how realistic is it? I mean, what are you really trying to hold on to here for a chance that you play a little bit better and two or three other teams kind of really go in the tank? I mean, that's what I feel like has to happen.
Well, look, man, I remember when the old man here in '96 talked about the commitment to the fans and all of that nonsense. And no one has been more committed to their fans than the Yankees, right? I mean, over the course of 25 years, if I'm a Yankee fan, if I'm doing sports radio, up here in New York, and we're talking about the Yankees, I would say break them up and just, nobody's mailing in their pinstripes. No one is burning their Yankees hat because the Yankees had a little fire sale the last week of July in 2016. If they're spending money in the offseason, which they will, if they're chasing other teams, Machado's and Bryce Harper's that get away 2 years from now, which I know is the rage. I mean, ESPN spent the whole night talking about that on Sunday night, about, they're going to be in great position to be able to sign everybody else's stars. Well, only if Mr. Angelos lets Machado walk away. Only if the Lerners can't get enough money in front of Bryce Harper to get deals done. That historically has been a problem, but all of these teams are awash in money. The Orioles can afford to give Manny Machado whatever they want to give him. They have plenty of money. Buck Showalter said so last year at the owners' meetings, or winter meetings. So any of the teams could give the money at this point. So the Yankees aren't unique in that case. There are 20 other teams now that can give a $25 or $35 million a year deal. They can.
Now the Yankees can do that with multiple players, whereas other teams might be able to do that with one guy, maybe two guys. But your point's well taken. But the big thing for them, and you've seen this with mixed results for them at best, is they need to rebuild a farm system. You think back to the six and became just pillars for them for more than a decade. That's the main reason why they were able to sustain success. Spending money's great. We talk about this all the time, but if you're an organization that's going to have long-lasting success, you better have a farm system that's able to produce either prospects for you to go out there and acquire major league talent to augment your club, or prospects that are going to come in and be part of the answer. And with the Yankees, we've talked about this. This is why I was completely wrong about them last year when I picked them to finish in last place. This year, I picked them to finish in last place. Clearly Tampa Bay is way worse than them, and I picked Tampa to finish in second. So I'm just proving I don't know what I'm talking about. But my point with not having a whole lot of optimism when it comes to the Yankees is they're old and expensive, and that's a dangerous combination when you're trying to have guys that fight off Father Time. We know ultimately Father Time is undefeated, and the problem is when Father Time wins that battle, you're stuck with really expensive players. We've seen it over and over. We saw it with the Phillies about 5 years ago. It took them a couple years to figure it out, and now they're still not good, but you see that they're on a path now to getting back to being a good team in the National League, probably another year away from being, maybe a wild card contender, let's say. I think the Yankees, I absolutely think the wise thing for them to do would be to sell off some pieces, get some young talent, go with some younger players. And then, as you mentioned, they have the resources that they don't have to go through a full-blown 5-year rebuilding plan. They can reload, and maybe not next year, but the year after that, certainly be back being a team, being dangerous, to do special things. But right now, I look at them a lot like I looked at the Orioles last year. Except the Orioles last year at least had some stretches where they played some pretty darn good baseball. Yankees, you just haven't seen that beyond maybe a week here or there. They've kind of been that team that's kind of dabbled right in that 5 below to 500 range really all season.
Luke Jones joining us here. We are WNST.net. We're going to be rocking the Orioles all week long with the Yankees and, of course, following the Justin Tucker story over the weekend, as well as the Ravens beginning training camp next week. Luke and I are all into Oriole baseball. But really, the next 10 days, as much as we're talking about training camp and getting ready for that, and I know all the football writers are going to be joining us later in the week here at WNST as well. This trade deadline thing is sort of an around-the-clock thing, right? I mean, it's going to come down to the wire, but we've already seen these sort of wildcat trades where Shields, goes to Chicago earlier, the Pomerantz thing happens. Teams that are willing to pull the trigger, that have that need, don't really sort of hang around to the last hour of the deadline to make a deal.
They do, but at the same time, I mean, one thing we've talked about, and this has really been the case since the introduction of the second wild card, you just have so many teams that, like the Yankees, for example, who are so hesitant to throw in the towel. Now, we're getting down to the final 2 weeks here, so I think you get a little more clarity, but to that point, there are some unique situations. It's a case where whether it's a salary dump or whether a team just flat out overpays, you're not going to see a ton of trades until you get down to these final 2 weeks, and it's going to be very interesting. I mean, we've talked about the starting pitching. Sure, he's going to be available. The Rays are doing that, but the Rays, that's very valuable to them as well, as opposed to just selling it off. So, you have Irvin Santana. Go down the list. I mean, there's not a whole lot there to be excited about. And in the Orioles' case, when you don't have a whole lot to give up, and we didn't mention this, but Hunter Harvey, forearm discomfort, left his start for Aberdeen on Saturday night. He's going to have an MRI, so is he finally going to head down the Tommy John road that many people have feared for the better part of 2 years now? Either way, one, he's not pitching for the Orioles, and two, you would think his trade value is completely shot at the moment. So they have Chance Sisco, they have a Trey Mancini, they have a couple other guys here and there that have some value, but I think the Orioles' ceiling for starting pitching help, you're probably looking at guys like Jeremy Hellickson or John Neese or guys like that who, quite frankly, don't have very good numbers right now. But the one piece of good news, as much as I sound so doom and gloom about the Orioles' trade prospects here, we've talked about the standard for their starting pitching being so incredibly low for that number 4 and number 5 spot in the rotation right now, regardless of how the Bundy thing plays out here over the next couple weeks. But even if they find a guy that's a 4.5 ERA kind of pitcher, which isn't very good, that's still better than what they've been getting, and that still might be good enough to get them to where they want to go, which is hopefully getting to the postseason. Now, you can certainly talk about how viable that's going to be once you get into the postseason, but I think you worry about that once you actually get to the postseason. So we'll see how it plays out, but I've said this all along, and I'm not going to change my tune now. I just don't see there being a whole lot out there that's really going to help them other than bringing in a warm body or two. Could a guy like Jeremy Hellickson be an improvement over Mike Wright or Tyler Wilson? Sure, but that's not a very high standard, and that's still there's still going to be some questions there as far as whether that's going to be good enough going forward. But as is always the case, it's going to be very interesting around baseball as far as this market. But it's very clear it's a seller's market in terms of starting pitching, and I think it'll also be a seller's market in terms of relievers. And I haven't mentioned this, but I think the Orioles could stand to add another relief pitcher, specifically if they can find someone from the left side. I think that some guys like that will be out there, but again, what's the price going to be in order to acquire that? It's going to be tricky.
Luke Jones joining us here. You can find him out on Twitter at Baltimore Luke, as well as Luke at WNST.net. The Orioles head off to Yankee Stadium for 4 games, and as we said earlier, skipping Tanaka, Gausman and Nova, Worley and Eovaldi, and of course Worley coming off 16 pitches on Sunday, Giovanni Gallardo and Pineda on Wednesday, and then the Thursday afternoon game, kind of an interesting pitching matchup on what should be a hot day up in the Bronx. Tillman and Sabathia on Thursday afternoon. In a prime matchup. And, hey, for the Orioles, there's no break here, right? I mean, whether it's Wieters taking a Sunday off or a Thursday off or whatever, they're going to play 17 days in a row in some, what at least appears to be already, oppressive heat.
Yeah, I guess, the one saving grace here, other than playing Cleveland, is they'll come home this weekend, back at home for the first time since the All-Star break. But, the one saving grace here is the Yankees aren't a particularly good baseball team. Colorado, you're not fearing them. They go there for that tricky, that not tricky, but unusual one game trip to Minnesota, and then business will pick up a little bit after that with Toronto and Texas after that. So they need to try to do some good work here over the next week and a half or so while they can. But you're right, you lose those precious off days. I mean, they just had 4, so overall they should be in better shape now than they were prior to the break. But no rest for the weary. That much is definitely true. And it's still so much of this is going to come down to the starting pitching, and at least, even if the quality isn't great, can they at least get enough length that they're not completely compromising their bullpen? And that's where you really have the concern. I mean, what Yovani Gallardo gave them on Friday night wasn't very good. I think that was obvious to anyone who watched that, but he did give them 5 innings, and they had a lead. They were able to be in the game there. He didn't get the win, but they get that kind of a start.
Well, they're never going to pitch their way to victories. They're going to hit their way to victories. I mean, for the most part,
I mean,
right?
They can live. And look, I'm not saying what Gallardo did was, and I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit, but my point is, can they at least get some 5-inning starts, some 6-inning starts, even if it's given up 3 or 4 runs where you say, that wasn't very good, but at the same time, it's not that giving up 7 runs in 2 1/3 innings, and 1, you're completely out of the game, and 2, you're completely blowing up your bullpen. Those are the starts that they need to completely try to avoid, and those are the starts that Ubaldo Jimenez was giving them, where at this point, I think it's clear you don't want him anywhere near your rotation, let alone debating whether he should be on the roster at this point. So can they at least get those types of outings like what they got from Gallardo, which, again, I want them to be better too, don't get me wrong, but if you at least get those kinds of starts, you can piecework this together, and you hopefully get Darren O'Day back here as he continues to improve, and hopefully add another bullpen piece, and maybe come away with a starting pitcher and get yourselves in better position for the final 2 months of the season. But you said it. It's going to be about this team hitting its way to victory and getting leads late in games that they can turn it over to Brock, Britton, and you hope O'Day being back in that mix sooner rather than later.
All right, we'll be following all things Yankee Stadium as well as Paul McCartney at Hershey Stadium as we continue our summer here, not just with rock and roll, but we are going to talk some first-place Orioles baseball. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. He is Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. Anywhere you are, we are Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, social media, Facebook Live. Our YouTube WNSTV channel is also rocking, and we're getting everything sort of ready for football season around here, and I think being back to work's a lot of fun. Anything you missed, you can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault at WNST.net. And, of course, our morning newspaper. It's your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning, and that is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Last but not least, even when we were away and trying to work on our suntan and catch up on a little R&R, whether it was in Wildwood or in Florida or at the beach, or wherever you happen to be in the coming weeks, you can always stay up on breaking news. WNST's breaking news service is our text service. It is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. You can sign up at WNST.net. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports. And WA Dome down in St. Petersburg, Florida, up to New York to take on the Yankees. This guy watched the birds fly all weekend and then, of course, maybe flop on Sunday with the Dylan Bundy start. He is, at heart, if you peel him open and cut him open like a watermelon on a summer day, inside that core, he's an Oriole fan. I know this to be a fact, but he is one of the broadcasters for the Tampa Rays radio crew, and he has made his way out to Denver, Colorado.